Welcome.
Good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, so I should start by how we met, because I think that's cool. We met on a beach in Hawaii.
Maui.
A few weeks ago, because Tom is a kite surfer. And that's how we met, which was pretty cool. And then the whole event, which is called Mai Tai, it's a terrible event in Maui that it's so tough to participate at, right?
It is. There's a lot of people wanting to go and not so many people who get to attend, but it's wonderful.
Excellent, yes. And so we all talked together using Voxer. And
yes.
So that was an amazing introduction. So we started using it for LeWeb internally, and it's incredible. So can you explain what is Voxer?
Sure. I mean, just simply Voxer turns your smartphone into a walkie-talkie. That's about as much explaining as we do to users, because it's sort of hard to describe what's actually underneath it. And so folks download it and they try it out, and they pretty quickly realize it's a bit more than a walkie-talkie. The original intent was it basically was driven by a frustration with existing push-to-talk systems and a realization that there were sort of two worlds of communicating. One was live-only systems like phone calls and push-to-talk, and messaging-only systems like email and IM. And we realized that there were a bunch of use cases that could be solved if you built one system that was both at the same time.
Like what use cases?
Well, the original inspiration was actually from my experience in the military in Afghanistan, and that was basically a frustration with an inability to really dynamically multitask when you're getting shot at. Quite frankly, it's when things aren't going so well and you need to call in for close air support and medevac and quick reaction force, you have to talk to your commander, you have your own team frequency, and there's other units in the area. You have too many channels to be on at the same time, and even though every teenager can have 5 or 6 chat windows open at the same time and effortlessly go between them without ever missing anything, that's not the experience of using live systems.
So wait, when was that, by the way, in Afghanistan?
2002 and 2003.
Oh, so you decided to serve?
Yeah, I had been in the Army after high school, and then got out and ended up out in Silicon Valley for the first .com boom and the bust, and sort of had this great run up and run down, and ended up at zero when September 11th happened, and decided to re-enlist and got back on a special forces team and deployed over to Afghanistan.
Wow.
It was in Kunar province. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
And so there you watch how soldiers collaborate, and you're frustrated.
Well, I wasn't watching. I was doing it.
Trying to not get shot, as you said.
Yes.
And you decided you would create an app that would fix that.
Well, I mean, at the time, I didn't have the idea for the app then. I just recognized that it really should be a lot better than this. The first time I went in the Army, I just learned how to use my gear, didn't question it. And the second time I went in, after coming from Silicon Valley, you look at the same equipment and you're like, wow, who designed this? Like, you must be able to use software to make something better than this. And so I had a critical eye to everything, and I asked a lot of questions. And it took me a couple of years after I came back before all the pieces came together in my head of how you could actually build something that's a little bit different.
So you've put together, so we use it, so I'm playing with it right now. You put together a few things. You have voice, so here I'm voxing the internal LeWeb group right now. There you go. And so now all my close team just got that, but I guess someone will show up on stage or something. Or you can text, or you can send a picture.
Yes.
So tell me about what's different with that. I could probably do SMS on one side. I could also do voice by calling, right?
Right. So we certainly didn't invent instant messaging or SMS or any of those things, and we certainly didn't invent push-to-talk or live voice. What we did invent was the ability to have them both be the same thing at the same time. So when you're speaking, if somebody's listening to you, they hear you while you're speaking. They hear you live. Live. But whether they're listening or not, they're still getting it as a message. So when you speak to your group, every single person gets it. If 2 of them are listening, they hear you live, they could respond as soon as you finish speaking, and you could have a very live experience. But everybody else gets it, no matter what, and it's woven into this nice threaded chat, so people don't get lost in it. And to sort of describe the difficulty in building one system that's both, if you think about sort of how a voice over IP system works, or any digital telephony system. The way that data is sent, sort of blasting UDP packets, and it's sort of optimizing for liveness, and you can drop packets and it keeps moving on, and you just have little dropouts, and versus the way email works, where you can send an email and it might be a terrible connection, you might even be offline, and as the connection gets better, it'll still go out, and it optimizes for the reliable delivery of that information with 100% accurate copy. And those are fundamentally different architectures. So those are fundamentally different and opposed in many ways. And we had to build one system that was both, because we wanted a system that was live but was also a message.
And you never lose a message, a voice message, or something like that.
Yeah, because if it's a live-only system, then it has to interrupt. Right? That's why, like Nextel or any of these walkie-talkies, they blare out, and that's why your telephone rings. It has to interrupt you. And that's why people tend to use messaging systems instead of live systems. But people don't like to wait. So there's nothing more frustrating than you see your friend has dropped into your voicemail. And you know if you just call them back, you're going to end up in their voicemail. And then you don't even know if they're leaving you a voicemail or not. And sometime after they're done leaving it, then you get the notification, and then you can start listening to it. And that's just not a good experience. When you see your friends talking, you want to jump in. And maybe it took you 5 or 10 seconds to jump in. But so you're listening 5 to 10 seconds behind them, that's fine. And actually, what happens with Voxer, if it takes you 10 seconds to realize that your friend is talking and you jump in, we actually play it automatically a little bit faster. So you're actually listening at the same time and you're catching up. And if they talk for long enough, you're at some point listening live. Or so close it doesn't matter.
How many users do you have, Tom?
I knew you were going to ask that. We don't really talk about specific numbers. What we do say is we have millions of daily users, and we have tens of millions of total users.
How many downloads?
You can probably do a little snooping around on the app stores and check, but it's tens of millions.
Yeah, on Android it's public, right? So I can just get that if you don't want to tell me.
Well, there are some brackets out there on the different
Why do you
stores.
not tell me the number of users?
It's a vanity metric. There are some apps out there that have a lot of users, but no engagement, and so their number of daily users is very, very small, and so they talk about the headline number.
Oh, who are you thinking about?
I'm not going to say. Most companies, most apps that you hear about are relatively low engagement, and we have quite exceptional engagement. But if we talk about sort of our daily users, then people will compare our daily users to other people's total downloads, and that doesn't make sense.
I agree.
So it's just confusing.
Tell me about the company. How much did you have to raise, or did you raise? And when did you start? When did you ship? And how much did you have to raise?
So, because what we built was actually hard to build, because we had to invent this stuff, and we made plenty of mistakes. We sort of, it's like, do you start with voice over IP and figure out how to make it reliable delivery, or do you start with email and figure out how to make it live? Like, both of those sound crazy. And we went down some wrong paths, and it took us 4 years to launch. So this has been a long,
4 years.
Agonizing, but amazing process. Working with great people, making the mistakes, and finding, having the determination, to drive through. And so, we launched on iPhone in May of last year. We launched on Android in November of last year. And it was shortly after launching on Android, once we went cross-platform, that we really skyrocketed.
You're not Android. You are Android.
We are
yes,
Android.
That's when you
November of last year.
Okay.
And that's when things really got exciting. And we hit an inflection point and started adding over 1 million users a week. And everything got crazy.
1 million users a week.
Yeah.
Oh, I got a number.
Yeah, you can do the math.
It's been tough.
And that changes the whole company, But prior to that, you spend all your time on product and on trying to iterate and make the product as good as possible. And as soon as the app got barely good enough, and things started to skyrocket, then it actually, in some ways, it's really frustrating because you can't iterate on the product anymore because you're just trying to keep the servers from falling over. And so all of your engineering resources are just focused on that. And so the app really hasn't changed that much since November, even though we know all kinds of ways that we can make it way, way better. And we're making small changes, but it's mostly just focused on just keeping the thing from falling over.
What's the user base? Because since I invited actually LeWeb participants to a group, some people tell me, oh, but it looks childish. Is it done for younger people? And
You know, we wanted something that was sort of a happy, light, fun look and feel to it. You know, with my background in the military and whatnot, the last thing I wanted was something that was sort of black and tactical and sort of, you know, too aggressive. I wanted something fun.
Dark green.
Yeah, I mean, our Android app is a little bit more that way, and that's because I let my designer sort of run wild and do whatever he wanted. And I tend to be the one who pushes towards the light, fun you know, look and feel, but you know, we haven't been able to really evolve it too much in the last, you know, well, since November. But there's some nice changes coming down the road.
Hey Yen, how are you? I see you on Voxer. It's really cool to see you around. This is the founder of TweetDeck, Yen Dotzdorf. That's how Voxer is really fast. I see it showing up, so he's probably in the room or listening. Hi, Yen.
Maybe he signed up while he was watching.
Yeah, very good. Do you guys have any questions for Tom? Well, I'll just keep going. Yeah, here. The microphone. Yeah, it's coming to you.
Hi, my name is Jerome. I'm a French entrepreneur, and I'm actually Voxering my mom right now because she's using Voxer a lot to keep in touch with the family. She's probably one of your biggest fans, so maybe she will answer us. So back to my question. I can see how many people have been using Voxer today to connect to each other, to find each other in this big venue. So I would like to know if the event industry is something you're interested in, if that's a space you are planning to disrupt with Voxer.
I have a message here.
Loic, this is Ian, enjoying the conference. And
Can you play it okay?
downloading Voxer, playing with it now, loving it.
Oh wait, I'm gonna do that again. This is Yen.
Hey Loic, this is Ian, enjoying the conference. And yes, just downloading Voxer, playing with it now, loving it.
To answer your question.
Thanks, Yen. Sorry, I had promised I wouldn't do that, right?
Yeah, that's
Tom
okay.
said, like, please don't, you know. Sorry.
To answer your question, we're not targeting any one industry in particular. We've had a lot of inbound interest from a lot of different types of businesses, large construction companies, hospitals, taxi fleets, all sorts of different organizations. We know that there's a tremendous amount of enterprise usage of the app. In addition to, you know, families, you know, moms, kids, et cetera, there's been a very, very broad adoption, and it's exciting. It's been especially exciting to see enterprises picking up, since that's our primary monetization path. Since we're currently working on offering a paid version for businesses. Yeah, so you know, the event space is one of many that we'd like to go after. We've really tried to build a product that's generally useful as a communication app, because it's always dangerous to assume you know who your users are going to be or exactly how they're going to use your product. So you want to sort of figure out something that's as broad-based as possible and then see how people use it and iterate and evolve it. Anyone else?
Next question. I hear the Voxers in the room.
Yeah, I can hear them too.
Yes.
Hi. Big Voxer fan. Just wanted to ask you one question. It's phenomenal that you kept going for 4 years. It took you 4 years to launch. What made you go that far, and you know, why did you believe in the idea till the end? Who supported you?
I'm a pretty stubborn guy in general. I don't really give up on anything, and I think that's part of what allowed me to go into special forces and do things like that. When I have my mind set on something, I'm pretty hard to dissuade from doing that. In terms of who provided the support, it was largely me. I'm fortunate that I started another business before this that gave me the means to do that. When I came back from Afghanistan, I started another company called Triple Canopy, that's a security firm. And my co-founder and I bootstrapped that to about 7,000 employees, and still have that today. So I sort of fill up the bucket with dividends on this side, and I pour out the bucket over here. And so I did that for right about 5 years. You know, so it was 4 years to launching a viable product, another 5 months or so to hit the inflection point. And then we had all of Sand Hill Road calling, and I decided that it might make sense to raise some outside capital. So just about 2 months ago, we raised our first external round and topped up with some cash. So my personal burn rate went down a lot about 2 months ago, which was nice.
Next question.
Thanks. Great. Can you hear me? Great
Yes.
story. Just curious, when you went out to the VCs and they said, okay, look, you have a day-to-day business as well, which is your existing company, but yet we're going to invest behind you and you have Voxer as your prime thing. I mean, the story you hear are VCs want 110% of your time, so how do you justify it?
That's an easy one. I stepped out of the day-to-day management of the other firm a while back. There was an individual who we hired early on who my co-founder and I looked at and thought he would be a much better CEO for that company than either one of us, and so we got out of the way. And so when I started Voxer, I was sort of without a job other than just being on the board, which is a pretty easy job. If you have a good CEO who does a good job running a business, being on the board is pretty easy.
And we can take questions from YouTube as well. That's what I'm looking at right now, the comments on the right. So if you guys online want to ask a question. Any more questions?
I have a question.
You have a question for me?
Loic, yeah. When are you going to have a LeWeb in Maui?
Oh, I wish. That's a great idea, and I know Bill is watching, so maybe we can extend Mai Tai, which is this awesome kitesurf
Yeah,
conference.
Susie Mai is here from the Mai Tai event, and that's a pretty special event. But this is spectacular, this venue here. It really
Yeah, it's.
really
I don't think you have a venue like this in Maui.
Yeah.
At least not as old. Any other question for Tom? I have more questions. If you guys don't have more questions, yeah, here's one here.
Is it possible to transform Voxer into your default calling app? Because I really see it becoming a replacement for my day-to-day calls. So if I don't want to fall on the voicemail, I just want to leave a Vox or anything. Is it possible?
Well, depends how you do it. What we didn't want to do was to build a lot of different gateways into existing systems early on. When you roll out something, a new technology, a new product that has a different user experience, the minute you tie it in via a gateway to something that's existing, you have to dumb it down to that old user experience. And so if we did that early, then it would act a lot like voicemail. And the experience of using Voxer is not at all like voicemail. It is something that we can, in a pretty straightforward manner, offer it as a voicemail replacement. But Voxer is a funny thing because we can build gateways, and we've built multiple of these gateways in the past just for our own fun. You build gateways to the PSTN, to live phone calls. You can build them into voicemail systems. You can build them to email. You can build them to SMS. You can build them to live push-to-talk radios. We've done exercises with the U.S. military where we've had their legacy, push-to-talk networks tied in via a gateway into the Voxer network. So you can be on a channel that not only do other people with Voxer hear you on that channel, but it's going out across a specific frequency in the military radios as well, and vice versa. All these things are fun, but every time you do it, whatever you've done the gateway to, you have to use Voxer in that specific way. So if you send a text or a picture and it's going out over a military, push-to-talk network, then they're not going to get any of that. They don't even know you're sending it, and they can't get anything that's not live. And so we've been very careful not to roll those types of things out too soon, since for most people the user experience of Voxer is very new, and we're really focused on growth and really having people really absorb and get into that new type of engagement, a new type of interaction.
Would you have an API?
We have an internal API that we're our own customers of our API, but we at some point would like to open our API under license to developers. But it's one of those things that it's difficult because you have to harden it. You have to sort of, sometimes my own engineers make mistakes and it causes problems and take down our back end because they do something inappropriate with our API. And so
you don't want another app to take down your back end.
Yeah, exactly. So we're being cautious. As we free up more cycles, we're just starting to get ahead of the curve here in terms of managing our growth. And so we're able to start focusing on those types of things and bringing in new features into the product.
What's the big picture? Tell me, like in 5 years, you think you just want to replace phone calls whatsoever? What's the vision?
So it's not specific to phone calls or anything else. There's this movement away from phone calls towards text and email for very specific reasons, and they're largely etiquette-based and efficiency-based. You can't really multitask with phone calls, and phone calls are interruptive. You have to call and interrupt someone to use it, to have a conversation with them, even if you end up leaving a voicemail. Excuse me. So, as the world moves more and more towards messaging systems, I refuse to believe that we're all going to become deaf mutes. I think people really like to talk. It's just the application of the phone, the phone call application, the way that the phone call is designed, it hasn't evolved, and it would be very difficult to evolve it into something radically different. So we started fresh with a new model that's more aligned with the etiquette and efficiency and dynamic aspects of messaging systems, but weaves in live voice.
So yes, you're trying to replace the telephone or voice on the phone.
We're a new thing. What did email try to replace? Letters or faxes? Or I don't know. Maybe, but it's sort of a different thing.
We use stamps and stuff. And
yeah, I guess but it's different. So I definitely know that the number of minutes I use on my cell phone are a tiny fraction of what they used to be. I don't really make phone calls anymore.
No, you should see Tom in the backstage. He was just voxing all over.
I mean, it's Voxer is, I think, a very useful application that people get a lot of enjoyment and benefit from. They use it all over the place, and I just want to see that keep growing. For me, I built it because I wanted it.
Yep.
As if phone calls and voicemail and all these things are frustrating and annoying, and I wanted something that was more efficient and dynamic and better.
It's interesting because Phil Libin said exactly the same thing. He built the app for himself first.
Yeah, it's the best thing to do.
Tom, anything that we haven't covered you'd like to add?
No, this is great.
One advice for entrepreneurs who want to create their company? One advice you heard that really changed, resonated for you?
Well, I guess the advice I'd say is everyone talks about it's all about the team, not about the idea, and pivot, and I sort of totally disagree.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely about the team, but part of it is that if you have good people, they're not going to go off half-cocked on an idea that's not a good idea. So, excuse me. So I think the idea is very important, and because in order to be successful, you have to be determined.
Wow, thank you very much. So you're at Tom Katis on Twitter if we want to, keep in touch with you, for example. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you just go on Voxer and you search Tom Katis in Voxer.
Thanks.
And you'll be able to reach Tom directly. I don't think they needed that.
No, I think that would have been pretty easy to figure out.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.